webinar on all things supply chain security and package management. Cloudsmith is your cloud-native, universal artifact management platform. We integrate with all your CI/CD, and we support all your formats, from your Docker images to your Rust crates to your NPM. So today we're going to be talking about how to securely connect to your SaaS build tool in your build pipeline securely. Often these connections involve long-running API tokens stored in your CI/CD environment, such as your GitHub Actions or your CircleCI. A classic use case might be you have your CI/CD tools, they need access to cloud services, your AWS, your Cloudsmith, to publish artifacts, to deploy software, access resources in their cloud provider. And the classic way to do this is to create a user in your cloud service, to generate a secret access key, and then to have this as your long-lived credentials. These credentials need to be stored in your access from your pipeline. They're probably stored in some secret store on your CI/CD. And the problem with this is they tend to have very extensive permissions, because they need to create, your CI/CD needs to create, to delete, to update resources in your source code, in your infrastructure, in your artifact management accounts. And unfortunately, these credentials can be leaked. It's hard to detect when this happens, and it's a big process to rotate these keys. The issue with the workflow above is that if the API key is stolen or leaked, there's a risk of unauthorized access. An attacker with these credentials can impersonate a user and execute malicious code. A better alternative is to use OpenID Connect, OIDC, and this enables short-lived authentication tokens, helping you secure your pipelines against the exposure of credentials. So providers that support this can improve the security of your supply chain overall. So today we are joined by Rob Godfrey. He's a senior technical architect at Financial Times. The Financial Times is one of the world's leading business organizations. I'm going to bring Rob on stage now. Hi,
Hello.
Rob, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Hey, do you want to tell us about your role in Financial Times?
Yeah, I've been at the Financial Times for a little over a decade now, so I've done a few things there. But my current role is I look after two kind of areas. So one of my teams that I work with, we look after our cloud platforms and our cloud estate, helping developers use AWS and Heroku and other tools effectively and also securely. And then the other team I work with look after our developer tooling. So things like GitHub and CircleCI and Cloudsmith and a few other things as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So I brought you on today because I know early in 2023, you got like a notice from CircleCI to say that you had to rotate and revoke your keys, which I'm sure was an easy task. Oh gosh.
Oh, we've got thunder here.
That is something.
I hope the internet lasts.
Yeah, it was like foreboding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you got that action required notice from CircleCI, and what was the first reaction?
Yeah, I think it was I think my second day back after New Year's, and waiting in my inbox when I kind of sort of started the day was this email from CircleCI saying, an advisory to recommend that we rotate all our secrets that we stored in CircleCI pipelines. And it was like, okay, so that's sort of, I think my plans for January kind of disappeared out the window at that point, because we use CircleCI extensively throughout our organization. We have well over 1,000 pipelines running in CircleCI, and there's a lot of environment variables that we had to inspect basically and triage, and then there were a lot of secrets that were potentially affected. So yeah,
can you give us an idea of what is a lot of secrets? Is it like 100?
Well, we didn't quite know to begin with, and so we kind of used the APIs that CircleCI provide to enumerate all the projects and then enumerate the secrets, and we ended up with well over 14,000 environment variables that we were contending with. And then after some triaging where we did a bunch of pattern matching on, we looked for AWS access key and other things like Vault token and there's a big list of these things that we went searching for, and then a bunch of human effort as well. We got that down. We reckon there was well over sort of 5,000 secrets that were affected and would need to be rotated. So this was quite a big deal. We had to coordinate a response across. Probably dragged in 30 to 40 engineers to work on this problem for several weeks.
Oh my God.
It was a big deal at the time. And required a lot of coordination, a lot of effort from teams, and the teams worked really hard. It was quite interesting work as well. So it took several. We identified the critical and high stuff first, and that they were rotated fairly quickly. But there was quite a long tail of other things that we were less concerned about, but still needed to be rotated. And so it took us several weeks to get through that set of thousands of secrets that needed to be rotated. So a big deal.
Yeah, no mess. And so like the immediate steps you took, obviously you were talking about them there, so identifying the most critical tokens. Is that the first thing that you did?
Yeah, we had to do a bunch of there were things we knew, so we were kind of looking for things like, okay, are there secrets that give you access to secret stores? Are there secrets that give you access to data, and particularly sensitive data or PII, that sort of thing? Are there things that allow changes to infrastructure? So there were certain classes that we cared more about, and there were other things like there were certain, I don't know, maybe sort of static analysis tools or test coverage tools that we were kind of less concerned about. They were kind of hoovering data out of our systems, but you couldn't really do much with that data that we were too worried about. So there were kind of definitely different categories of secrets. So we had to kind of assign a severity and then prioritize all the critical and kind of high severity things and get those rotated super quickly.
And so did you use this as like I know the answer, but use this as an opportunity to actually improve the security of your build pipelines and your supply chain security overall?
Yeah, definitely. I think never let a good crisis go to waste, as it were. So we kind of looked at a few things. So once the dust had settled, we sort of did some retrospective type stuff and kind of focused on a few areas. And so one of them was why do we have so many secrets? That's a big number. With a lot of pipelines, you get a lot of secrets. But we'd already kind of started the journey of using OIDC with AWS.
Okay.
But we hadn't used that exclusively everywhere. So focusing on these kind of using short-lived ephemeral secrets wherever we can was kind of top of the list, because it obviates the need to manage that secret within a pipeline. Right. So, and then you don't need to manage it in a secrets manager. And then there's a whole bunch of complexity you sidestep by just using short-lived secrets. We also then decided that rather than having secrets sort of sat in environment variables within pipelines, we'd pull secrets from the secrets manager as part of the pipeline execution. So they then didn't live for a long time in the CircleCI environment. They were just there during a pipeline's execution. So you kind of minimize the time those sort of secrets were kind of available within the build environment. And then thirdly, we looked at, can we automate secret rotation wherever possible? Because manually rotating secrets is toil and drudge work, and it's really hard to do that for weeks on end without making mistakes.
And it's hard to keep the morale up and for weeks doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And does CircleCI provide with like extra tools to help their customers during this time?
They did actually. They did a fairly good job. So they reacted pretty well. So I think we kind of realised that this isn't the first time we've had this sort of a secret leak. We've seen similar things with other suppliers as well, and so they provided some tools to help enumerate secrets. They provided one thing that was missing that was really useful when they added it, was adding timestamps to last change timestamps for environment variables, so you could tell if someone had changed value of an environment variable, which kind of gave us an indication that yes, this had been dealt with as the secret had been rotated.
Oh yeah, and so is that in the audit log or is it in the settings or something? How did you?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think they just, I think initially it was part of an API, and then they exposed it maybe through the UI as well. So you could, so we could get the data that said, these are the things that haven't been rotated, because we already had rotation in place for quite a lot of things, but there were definitely things that weren't in being rotated as perhaps they should have been according to our internal policies.
Oh yeah, it's like, nothing like a crisis to make you realize that this is not a drill.
Indeed.
And was there any when you were adopting OIDC where available? I know not all build tools support it. Was it difficult or was it challenging at all to get it? Was it just like to get it all your configurations updated? Was it like a difficult process?
There is a bit of complexity in getting the sort of essentially the trust relationship between, in our case, there was CircleCI and AWS and CircleCI and Cloudsmith. So there is some configuration to get that set up. But once that's set up, it's then really focused on how do you make the developer experience really simple. So Cloudsmith, you provide an endpoint in your API, but even that we felt was too much. We wanted a couple of lines in the CircleCI configuration to essentially give us this ephemeral token rather than invoke an API endpoint, get some, parse the status code, parse the token out, and kind of make it available. So we wrapped the API call in a what's called a CircleCI orb, a bit of reusable pipeline configuration. So basically, when an engineer wants to get a Cloudsmith OIDC token, it's sort of 2 lines in their CircleCI sort of configuration for their pipeline.
Oh, that's cool. And so when you're doing this at scale, is it like actually handy enough once you've already rotated all the tokens, you've tried to minimize the amount of tokens used or access, and then when you're adding OIDC, I suppose you've done all the hard work in doing all the rotation already, so it's not such a hurdle to add this in, especially when this will stop this happening again. If a breach does happen, you're like...
Well, I think the nice thing about using OIDC is it's just a lot simpler, right? So with a short-lived credential, you don't need to store it in a secrets manager. You then don't need to really track it and say who's going to own this secret and be responsible for it. You then don't need to rotate it ever, because it's only going to live for an hour or so, or minutes or hours, rather than weeks and months. So you kind of you completely sidestep a whole bunch of complexity. So that's why where OIDC is available to us, we will use that in a heartbeat over kind of long-lived credentials now.
Oh, absolutely. And is there some tools that you kind of wish were supported OIDC? Is there?
Well, if you just think of the moving parts in your pipeline, you've kind of, it would be great if, everything, kind of hooked together with OIDC within the pipeline, so then all those things didn't know. A challenging bit, and one thing we're looking at internally, is whether internal kind of APIs could be enabled via some sort of OIDC integration, but that's going to be a custom built kind of OIDC endpoint.
Yeah, I know OIDC has this idea of the provider and the service. So in that scenario, who's the provider? I suppose you're just using your whatever the Google or AWS credentials. Is that what it?
Yeah, so you've got the CircleCI acts as the sort of, it will pass information about the pipeline and the organization and the various bits and pieces of information about the job execution, and then it's up to the service essentially to evaluate whether that information looks okay, and then issue a short-lived credential based on the information it provides and the trust relationship it has. So we're looking to see if we can use kind of AWS's OIDC capabilities to essentially provide a shim to other services is kind of how
brilliant. For internal stuff as well.
Yeah, so you can lean on sort of IAM credentials and their sort of short-lived role-based tokens.
Yeah, and for services that don't currently support OIDC, I think you have a kind of a way to make that a little bit more secure as well, and make revoking and rotating API tokens a bit easier.
Yeah, so one of the areas we looked at was how do we do sort of automated key rotation, and we use a tool called Doppler, and we've brought that tool in because it has integrations with various other bits of our estate, so AWS and Heroku, CircleCI, GitHub, and so you can basically take a secret, publish it into Doppler, and then Doppler will know where to then push that secret to, if that's how you want to set things up. So you can say, okay, when I'm rotating a secret, you can basically go into Doppler and say, rotate this secret. It can go off to AWS, say, generate a new user credential, and then push that out to CircleCI or wherever it needs to go. So it's kind of, it's taking all the complexity and the toil away, I guess, is what it's.
Yeah, is that where you're always? Do you find that security and simplicity just go really well together? That when you remove that complexity, that it just generally is more secure?
It doesn't have to be security. If you want to kind of make nudge an organization in a certain way, make it really simple. And so in this case, yes, it applies to security, but there are lots of other things. So we do similar things with cost optimization and things like that. So kind of making the sort of preferred choice, the easy choice.
Yes.
It's
easy to nudge them.
If it's hard, you're not going to get any traction. That's the reality.
Absolutely, yeah. So, so were there any after this breach and how it took so many resources of the Financial Times for weeks on end? Was there any extra tooling and infrastructure that you brought in besides Doppler and OIDC? Or training or anything like that?
I think the one thing we have an internal sort of inventory of our infrastructure estate, and so some of the things we did to augment that was to actually expose metadata about secrets into that as well. So that gave us a way to, and this kind of inventory, it's basically a big graph database, and it connects together our systems, the people that operate those systems, the infrastructure components that are kind of part of that system. And we didn't have secrets in this time last year, but now we do. So we can basically link together, okay, this if we know this secret's been affected, we can easily work out, okay, well, we need to go and talk to this team over here about that. So, and that's across all our different platforms. So we have little bots or agents that kind of go into AWS and pull out metadata, or go into Heroku or CircleCI or GitHub and kind of hoover up all this sort of metadata about our secrets, and also things like SSH keys and certificates. And then once we have all that, it makes it really easy to sort of start to go, there's issues over here that we need to go and look at.
And so do you have any advice to give other companies that experienced a breach?
I think it's worth preparing for it. So at least kind of run a thought experiment where you kind of think, okay, what would happen if our secrets in one of our vendors were leaked? How would we react? And a part of that, I think what we worked out was we kind of need to know where our secrets are. What secrets do we have? Who's responsible for them? So that then you got kind of because one of the challenges we had actually was we had secrets when we were trying to rotate that were part of systems that the responsible person had maybe left the company, and so we now couldn't get into the an external system that issued the secret. So we had to start raising support cases in certain instances to kind of get access to rotate secrets, which is never a great thing. But that's those sorts of things happen when people leave organizations, unfortunately.
And is that the service you were talking about, this graph catalog before? Is that how you addressed that issue?
Yeah, well, we can certainly spot things when we know if people have left the organization, for example. So you can kind of quite quickly see that are there kind of areas of our estate where we need to maybe reassign ownership of stuff and things like that. So
yeah. And even what you're saying there kind of reminds me of like the problem of like supply chain security, where you need to know a big problem is when a vulnerability comes in, you need to know actually what's in your software. It's sort of
yes.
the same with it's like the same problem basically. Knowing what you have is and being able to audit that gives you a step up.
Yeah, and certainly things like knowing how to rotate, like rotation procedures, because you have all sorts of different secrets and from different sort of source systems. You know, you kind of got to have that documented somewhere, and say, yeah, and then if you can automate those processes as well. So yeah, it's yeah, certainly when you kind of like got lots of interconnectivity between lots of SaaS providers, it gets quite complex.
Yeah, it's like, so simplicity and knowing what you have and who owns it is would help.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just see if there's any questions. Oh, there's something in the chat. Oh, Christopher can hear us both. Thank you, Christopher. Maybe it was just me then.
Oh, well.
But and does anybody from that's joining us today have any other questions on how to react to a breach or OIDC? We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, so no questions so far, but looking ahead, is there any other strategies that you'd like to adopt in order to improve your supply chain security, your build tool security?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely focused on package management. So we became a Cloudsmith customer last year. So we recognised that our approach to package management needed some updating, shall we say. And yeah, we're kind of in the process of progressively rolling out Cloudsmith as our kind of universal package manager for different ecosystems. So we've done about 5 language ecosystems now. We'll do a couple more this quarter, and we'll continue rolling that out throughout the organization. So yeah, cool. that's the main focus from the sort of the build tooling. Yeah, that's the.
And do you think like this whole incident, do you think it has made you more aware of other issues that were maybe possibly in your build pipeline, and kind of
I think it
sit up and take note? Not that you didn't do that before, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think what it has done is basically it sort of burst the bubble that you kind of, you know, I think when you came, we use lots of SaaS vendors, right? And so you kind of expect them to manage stuff securely. And then I think when these sorts of things happen, and certainly happen to a few of your vendors, you kind of sort of take stock and think, well, it could probably happen to any of our vendors at some point. So we need to be somewhat prepared for that eventuality, and so that we can kind of respond appropriately.
Yeah. So having sort of like a plan to if something happened, and not being shocked and kind of left standing still.
Yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, things like getting insight into, as I say, secrets now, we kind of prioritize that. So we kind of at least know where secrets are maintained and managed, and that sort of thing. It really helps, or will help, we hope, with anything in the future.
Great. So thanks so much, Rob, for today. Really appreciate it. And it was great talking to you about this, because I'm sure this can happen to any company, basically. All the companies we deal with, they have we're a SaaS tool. They'll probably have more than one SaaS tool in their build pipeline, and this will be front of mind for them. And maybe it was, people use this as a time to reevaluate the tooling they are actually using in their build pipeline.
Cool.
So yeah, thank you so much, Rob, for today. And so our next webinar will be next month, and I will let you know the details of that. And we'll talk to everybody soon. So thanks again for coming, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.